from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. We're here in an off studio in my apartment building. We're in a shared space. I'm not sharing it with anybody other than my guest right now. I'm very excited for tonight's guest. It is Lightning Week here in New York City, so there's a lot of very talented Lightning developers in town. So I got a slew of interviews set for this week. The first one is one I'm probably most excited for, is with Lightning Koala. I'll introduce you all to Lightning Koala. Welcome to the pod.
Hello, everybody. I'm stoked to be here.
Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you coming on. So for you freaks that don't know, Lightning Koala is a Lightning developer who burst onto the scene earlier this year with his website satoshis.place, where you could go and use the Lightning work to pay per pixel to draw on this. Basically, I like to reference it as like a public graffiti.
Yeah, it's like a public toilet graffiti.
Yeah. So before we jump into like Satoshi's place, like how did you get into Bitcoin? What's your tale?
I got into Bitcoin around about end of 2013, 2014. I can't remember exactly what, but the earliest memory I have was watching Andreas Antonopoulos speaking to the Canadian Senate.
Mm-hmm. What were you doing at this time?
I was in Portugal.
Yeah.
So for the audience listening, I'm Portuguese,
mm-hmm.
and at the time I was just working remotely as a full stack developer.
Yeah. What type of systems were you building? Like websites, CMSs, or?
Yeah, web apps.
Mm-hmm.
It was a learning application.
Mm-hmm.
The software was actually serving Chinese customers, and it was kind of like a e-learning application.
Okay. What interested you in Bitcoin when you first got into it? Was it the tech, the money, the philosophy, sovereignty? Yeah,
so I started studying about finance and economics when I was at university. I studied engineering, electronic engineering, so there wasn't much about finance in there. So I just started reading about it, and probably the first thing I started, the first experience trading was with Forex.
Mm-hmm.
And this was just before the financial crash of 2008 happened. And it was pretty eye-opening experience at the time, because I remember, so one of the first lessons I learned was from my then manager. I was working at an engineering company doing PCB design,
mm-hmm.
and we used to just like sit down and talk about the finance and stocks, and I remember when the crisis was happening and like things were crashing down, I kept asking him, "Oh, are you panicking? Are you selling? Are you selling?" And he said, No, I'm buying. So it was the first time I learned the lesson of buy the dip.
Right. That's a good experience. Good time to learn that when it was dipping the hardest it has in decades.
Yeah. So as the markets were crashing, and I saw sort of around 2013, 2014, the bear market, I saw sort of a similar pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started researching Bitcoin, I felt like the fundamentals were really solid, but yet we had a downwards trend. And so I started buying Bitcoin and getting more and more into it. And yeah, it's rabbit hole basically from then on.
Getting more into it. You're at the point where you're in New York City because you're teaching at Lightning. Well, you're part of a Lightning Network boot camp at Chainco Labs this week. So you've obviously studied this a lot and got to a point where you know a lot. So how'd you get into development on Bitcoin in particular? Did you ever mess around with like protocol level stuff, or did you go like right to Lightning?
Yeah, the first experience I had with developing on Bitcoin was actually with the 21 computer.
Yeah, I have one upstairs.
I'm keeping it, so maybe I'll go into a museum one day.
That's what I'm thinking too. I got mine.
And that's sort of like the first time I started playing around with programming with Bitcoin, and I never really got into like protocol development, but from then on it was basically running nodes and just figuring out how security works in Bitcoin. And I went through a shitcoin phase as well, as most
we all
people
do.
And just eventually when I saw Lightning, I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is it for payments, at least.
Yeah. Was there something about the machine payable web in 21, what they were doing, like the concept of that drew you towards it?
Yeah. I just wanted to get my hands dirty, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't really, didn't think anything in particular about machine-to-machine payments, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's take like a step even further back. Like, how'd you get into, it seems like you're trading Forex, you're doing development. Like, what was your upbringing? What did you study? Did you go to university? Were you like a computer nerd growing up, or more finance economics based?
Yeah, I was a computer nerd growing up. Played a lot of games, actually.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Asia, and games were very accessible. There was like pirated games everywhere. So my childhood was pretty much, I remember like going out and just choosing any game I wanted for $1, and like, and then I remember when I moved back to Portugal, one of the things that the school kids were like, oh, no way, there's this like disc that you can put on a Nintendo, like a disc reader. No, it's just cartridges. And I'm like, no. There's these discs that you can just rip games off of.
I had a modded PlayStation at one point in my life. It's a true fact. Northeast Philadelphia Christmases come with modded PlayStations.
Yeah.
So when you got into gaming, and then how does the development in the world that you were in before you got into Bitcoin compare to like what you're doing on Lightning right now? And just to let you know, like Lightning is still like a bit of a mystery to me. It's something I haven't taken like the deepest dive in. I've always just conceptually it makes sense like to push things to a second layer.
Yeah.
I plan on really experimenting with Lightning when I get my Casa node in a couple of weeks here.
Oh wow, you ordered one.
Yeah, I did. So I'm gonna try and that's
awesome.
I'm gonna try and jump into the deep end with that thing.
That's really awesome. I was talking about that to Pierre today, actually.
Yeah.
Just asking if he ordered one as well, because I didn't get a chance to order one, but also I have my own node at home from a single board computer. So
yeah, I saw you retweeted something about a Raspberry Blitz, which is they're trying to do like a Raspberry Pi node as well.
Yeah, so it's a open source project just showing how to set up your own Raspberry Pi node for Lightning, and it's really useful if you don't know much about like command line stuff, and just kind of it's like a step-by-step guide.
Yeah.
For it.
No, that's what I'm looking forward with Casa as well, because it seems like they have a very, very sleek onboarding process.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the biggest problems is like setting up, running, and keeping these nodes running. I guess that's a good segue to go into like what are like the biggest obstacles that Lightning has right now, and as a developer, what's like been the hardest part of building on Lightning? What's improved since you built satoshis.place? Yeah,
so UX is sort of the angle where I'm coming from, because most of my experience as a software developer has been in front end and back end work, but mostly front end. I've kind of specialized in like React and React Native stuff, and I kind of like that intersection of users and interfaces. And so with Lightning, there's a ton to do. I mean, I don't think we're in a year into the first implementations that are out, and despite the amount of development and interest that we've seen, I think there's still a lot to be done. With satoshis.place in specific, my aim was to basically be the answer to the question that most people will probably have the first time that they install a node or a wallet, which is how can I test this, and can I see it working, basically. So the reason a pixel costs 1 Satoshi and it will always cost 1 Satoshi is simply so it's the cheapest thing that somebody can just go on and try it and see that, yeah, it works. Yeah. And are you making any money from this, or? Not that much, a little bit, but I lost most of it in a boating accident.
That'll happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
I'm sorry to hear about that boating accident. You gotta be careful when you're boating. Never drink and boat, people.
It's wavy and just drinking on a boat. It's not good.
So, Yeah, so you said Lightning, it's still very early. Like, how early are we? What needs to happen? Like, what are the biggest obstacles that Lightning has to overcome?
There's a lot of protocol development that still needs to happen.
Yeah.
For instance, backups. This is like a huge one. Today at the Lightning residency, we were talking about a lot of these different things that need to happen. Backups is a really big one. Light clients are probably another one.
Isn't that big news this week or last week for that was Neutrino just launched, right?
Yeah. And also other things like the way the penalty system works right now.
So what's the penalty system?
So if a peer tries to broadcast a previous transaction or previous state of a channel in order to try and steal your funds, and you detect that, then you basically get to punish him and take all of the funds. But this plays into the backup problem where sometimes you don't do that by mistake. Your node goes down for some reason, and you come back up, or your data gets corrupted and you need to restore things, but you don't have the latest state. And as soon as you broadcast an old state, then the other person might take those funds.
You sort of have to ask them for it back, or you might not even know who they are.
Yeah, well, it's the game theory is just not in your favor, basically.
Yeah.
And so there's solutions proposed for that. One of them is called L2 by Christian Decker and I can't remember his name now. I'm sorry. And it's just basically a different way to construct the way the transactions work in Lightning, so that that basically doesn't happen. And some other things like fees, for example. So right now, you need to commit to a certain fee for the closing transaction, and you can't change that. So, if transaction fees on Bitcoin spike, then that's a problem. And so with L2 and SIG-hash no input, you can basically bind it in a different way so that it doesn't. You can basically change the fee and change the way the transactions are.
You couldn't do like.
I'm by no means an expert on this, but
you couldn't do like a replace by fee.
Sort of like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's crazy how intricate these systems are getting.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And then I know you're working on the front end, but just from a scaling perspective, like I'm a big believer. You may know that like we need to scale this in layers, and Lightning as a second layer makes a lot of sense. So like what type of things do you see it enabling as an app developer? What type of apps are being built at the hackathons around the world? It's crazy how many like Lightning, the FOMO? Lightning hackathons. There's one this weekend here in New York. So
yeah, FOMO is actually one of the first people to draw on Satoshi's Place.
Yeah,
and I haven't met him yet. Hopefully this Saturday he's hosting one here. That one in New York. But the applications that it will enable. So part of my talks this week will be about Lightning powered games. So I see some applications there. Machine to machine API payments. Basically what 21 was trying to do is, I believe, now possible with Lightning. And so I think there's a kind of beautiful irony to the way that Adam Back's Hashcash proof of work stuff came to be used in Bitcoin. So Satoshi decided to use proof of work. But the origins of proof of work was to solve email spam, because we didn't have a digital native currency. Well, now we do, and now we've found a way to realistically scale it, and now we have the possibility to do microtransactions on a digitally native currency, and I think that's incredibly powerful. Satoshi's Place, in some ways, is sort of like DDoS protected because of this fact that you have to pay like 1 Satoshi per pixel. If you think about it, like how else would you do it? Like if you didn't have micropayments in this game, like people would just end up spamming it, and it would probably look worse than what it.
We're seeing it now. Somebody put a Shepherd Ferry up there. The Obey posters up there. I like that. No, but it's crazy to see what this is enabling, and another huge theme of Tales from the Crypt and Rabbit Hole Recap the last month has been patience, and the fact that a lot of these apps that are getting built out now were once ideas that somebody launched a token to fulfill because Bitcoin had a perceived shortcoming. That
Nick Carter has the FUD dice.
Right? I got him up. Yeah, I got the FUD dice upstairs. Yeah.
Should play a game.
But that's why we're going to make a drinking game with the FUD dice. This is a call to action for all the freaks and crypto Twitter people out there. We need to come up with a formal drinking game for the FUD dice. The bounty is out there.
Cards Against Humanity with FUD dice. There's an idea there.
There's an idea. There's a starting point. The dice are a starting point. We just need to move from the dice to a drinking game.
Yeah, and Bitcoiners are really receptive to this kind of merchandise / Bitcoin culture related stuff.
Memeware.
Memeware.
Yeah, it's some qual memeware Nick's producing with the dice. He said there's a supply cap, but I have a feeling that he's going to neg on that supply cap. He's known to do that.
Inflationist.
With all of his products, specifically his podcast appearance. But we all know too well about that. But the point I was getting at is like Lightning, and now what Blockstream launched 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks ago now, or last week. I can't even remember. Liquid. Yeah. Sort of proving that Bitcoin can enable all of these use cases. It's just going to be done on different layers and different ways. So that's actually what's interesting to see right now is Liquid and Lightning running in parallel sort of prove two different ways you can attempt to scale. Maybe one will be successful, the other won't. Maybe they both will be. Maybe they'll both fail. Who knows? But they're attempting to drive the issue forward.
Yeah, people need patience, but also perseverance in the development work that's being done, and I think the way Bitcoin is headed is extremely promising. The if you reason about like why we need a stable base chain. And from there you can scale on second layers and third layers and so forth, like that. It makes sense in engineering terms. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So you said you dabbled in shitcoins for a while. What drew your allure? Like what interested you? Did you have these like the FUD dice mentality at any point?
Yeah, well, the full disclaimer, I participated in the DAO. Should be a sticker for my car.
You should get a badge of honor for that.
Yeah.
A merit badge. I participated in the DAO.
Yeah. What interested me, I don't know, just curiosity. I think it's unfair to sort of look at people. It's unfair to look at people and assume that they haven't gone through the rabbit hole experience. It's just there's so many different ways people can reason about this new technology. It's just like somebody described it once as like a new metal that just landed from an asteroid, and we just kind of pick it up and we look at it and we can't really understand what it is, but it's got these amazing properties. Like you can, yeah. And what was I talking about? Yeah. So shitcoins. Yeah.
not faulting people for not going through the cycle fast enough.
Yeah.
Or something like
that. Yeah. And smart contracts and all that stuff, and right. And so when you I just think a lot of people go through this journey, and we might be at different stages and we might end up in different places, but it's kind of, I just like to give people the benefit of the doubt, basically.
Yeah. No, I do as well. And it's interesting, especially during the depths of this bear market, to see how it feels like everybody's starving and backed into a corner and lashing out. And you see Bitcoiners turning on each other, Bitcoiners turning on altcoiners, altcoiners turning on each other.
Yeah.
The
stakes and guns.
Yeah, who was calling that out? Somebody was calling out. Somebody took a picture of breakfast. It was adorned with meats, some bread. I think there were some carbs on the table. Actually, it was anti-carnivore, guns and like hardware wallets, and people are trying to attribute that to like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin mentality.
Yeah,
which is not everybody's like that, but it's a funny meme. That's the other thing people don't realize.
Yeah,
that was posted in jest to sort of trigger people, and it did.
Twitter is amazing, but sometimes it's like a sliver of what's out there.
Exactly.
It's easy to get lost in random rants and memes, but then you start seeing people in these meetups and talks, and you realize, wow, there's like a lot going on behind the scenes.
So let's talk about that. Do you travel to a lot of meetups, a lot of talks, or?
Not so much. I work remotely most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this year was probably the year where I got a lot more exposure to Bitcoin conferences and meetups. I have been to other meetups before in the past, but probably the best one I've been so far was Building on Bitcoin in Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
It was just incredible to see the amount of talent in the room and everybody just talking about how to improve this network, how to build on it, how to and not kind of like getting lost in pitching things to each other. It was
it's
refreshing.
I had a similar experience in Latvia, in Riga.
Oh yeah, you went to that. Yeah,
at Baltic Honey Badger. That's what I wrote about it in the newsletter. I said it had like a revolutionary feel where like outside the talks, when it was like coffee breaks, everybody was outside and they're very genuinely having open conversations, feeling out like the attack vectors and how to protect Bitcoin going. It was, it had this very like everybody felt responsibility for arbitering the network into the future, and it's a very mission driven movement. It feels like people are very passionately like into Bitcoin for very ideological reasons. Yeah.
2018 is a pretty good year for meetups and conferences. I feel like a vintage year, perhaps.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Just like it seems like you had a good experience at Latvia, and like Lisbon was really good. You got a residency in New York now, but a bunch of other people were. I watched some videos from Tone Vase, and I see he's been like to a lot of different places as well, except for the blockchain cruise. That was a bit.
Let's talk about the blockchain cruise. We haven't talked about the blockchain cruise on this podcast.
I'm not an expert on blockchain cruises.
Neither am I, but I saw some videos. It just looks bad all around.
Yeah. I couldn't see why like Jimmy Song and Tone Vase wanted to go there. I don't know. When I heard about blockchain cruise and I saw the guest list, I just thought, wow, that's an explosive mix of people. Yeah, on a boat in the middle of the Mediterranean.
Cruises in general just do not appease me at all.
No.
What would I rather do than go on a cruise? That's a good question. I think I'd rather do like homework for a week than go on a cruise. As a 27-year-old man, I really would not like to go on a cruise, number one. Number two, to be subjected while on the cruise to debates about cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash.
Did you see how much it cost?
No, I did not.
It was
probably luckily
expensive.
Yeah.
It was up in the thousands. Just thought, wow. Could do so much with that money.
buy a good amount of Bitcoin with that money.
You know? Yeah, and that area of Europe is so beautiful. My fiance is from Italy, and we like travel a lot around that area in Sicily and Sardinia and stuff. Like it's why would you
subject yourself to being stuck on a boat for 2 weeks or a week, whatever it was?
But respect for them to kind of like stand up on stage and confront the mob.
Yeah, it's like that's one thing I've been going back and forth with lately. Is I think we're at a point where we don't even have to like respond to the mob because it's been responded to so many times.
I think so as well.
It's like Satoshi said, if you don't understand,
I don't have time.
I don't have time to fill you in.
I agree. I think don't feed the troll.
Don't feed the troll, and the markets are proving that this path has been right up to this point.
Yeah, and there's so much other constructive stuff to focus on and build. And the thing is, I kind of understand because there's a lot of deception, and I can understand that for newcomers, it's going to be really hard to navigate.
Yeah, very confusing. Especially, you Google Bitcoin. Bitcoin.com is like the first.
Right.
It's got the best SEO.
Yeah. And you read it, and it's like, it's Bitcoin, and it's Bitcoin Cash. And then, well, what is it then? You know? So, I understand, like, why some people will take it upon themselves to try and clear the muddy waters. I respect that. As an engineer, it's not something that I necessarily think I would enjoy being involved in. I'd just rather focus on building stuff.
Leave it to us shit posters. We'll take care of that for you.
Yeah, Marty, you got our back, Marty. Do it.
No, that's actually one thing I wrote about today, which is how we should market and pitch Bitcoin to the overwhelming public who's not really adept to what Bitcoin is and isn't really interested in. Let me pull this up. I want to give correct attribution. I wrote about in the newsletter today. This guy, Willem Vandenberg.
Seen him.
Vandenberg. He basically posted a thread saying, if we are to believe that Bitcoin is going to follow the Nick Sabian path to becoming money, which is something moves from a collectible to a store of value to medium of exchange to unit of account, it's going to take time. And if we're being honest with ourselves, Bitcoin right now is still in the collectible phase, and marketing it as a viable medium of exchange doesn't do us any favors because you're sort of over-promising and under-delivering, because Bitcoin at the protocol level is certainly not a good medium of exchange. You got 10-minute block times, fees, a float fluctuation of the price. So marketing it as a collectible that could potentially become a medium of exchange if it gets enough value to saturate to where it become viable, and you have second layers that are fully functional and built out, then yes, it makes sense. So maybe we should be under-promising and over-delivering in the future.
I feel like the store of value stuff is coming along pretty well. It depends where you are, really, where in the world you are. I mean, I grew up in Asia, and I traveled a lot around Southeast Asia, and I can really see how, like, in a lot of situations, for some people in particular, you know, putting savings into Bitcoin, even if it's volatile. I mean, savings is sort of like a long-term thing, right? You shouldn't be thinking about storing value in Bitcoin for the next year. It should be like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, even longer, right? And for that purpose, it's good. It's retained its purchasing value, and it's even gone up. But it's kind of, I see the collectible, definitely, like the bootstrapping stage, the Bitcoin, the store value. These are all things to me that are going to grow until eventually we hit unit of account. And this is where I see Lightning actually playing a really big role in the medium of exchange part. So some of the stuff that I've been exploring is thinking about how you can use Lightning to build and implement use cases which aren't really possible with the existing financial world that we have, right? And because, you know, using it for merchants, like brick and mortar shops and even e-commerce, it's fine, it's good, but it's not that 10x improvement, right?
Yeah.
And for most people in the West, at least, you know, we have contactless payments. At least, I don't know about the US actually, but in the UK, you know, you can travel by bus, by train. You can pay for stuff for your shopping.
It's not ubiquitous, but it exists here.
Yeah, and so most people are comfortable with that. That's a good experience. And if you're challenging that with Bitcoin or Lightning, you need to see, okay, is this a 10x improvement? Because otherwise people aren't going to move over, right? It's the same as saying, like, I'm gonna give you a phone, and unless it's 10x improvement, which they usually are, right? Because every 2 years, for example, they get way better. Or on the internet, somebody shows you a new internet and they say, hey, use this instead. You're like, well, is it that much better than what I'm using right now? Like Mastodon, for example. Maybe I shouldn't talk about that because I haven't tried it. But anyway, so the way I try to frame it is like, okay, well, what can you build that is that 10x? Mm-hmm. And you can't do it with the existing means, and which will actually make people think, wow, that's cool, I want to use that. Mm-hmm. And so I need to use Lightning I'm going to learn about it because I want to use that, right? And so this is why I'm exploring this idea of Lightning games, because I think there's a lot of potential use cases there.
How so? What type of use cases? Like, what is the 10x improvement in gaming?
Yeah, so this is actually the subject of my last talk this week, and I should really pull up my slides. But but essentially, I started by looking at how do games use money nowadays, mm-hmm. And if you think about it, like you can purchase games, you can purchase in-app items, in-game currencies, you can gamble, and the first couple examples are usually like unidirectional, right? So you're paying to consume something, mm-hmm. But generally speaking, you don't have a game of like Call of Duty and then somewhere in the middle you earn money, right? Unless it's a tournament or something like that. With gambling, there's some more use cases where there's this bidirectional thing. You put in money, you play a game of poker, and then you pull it out. So with Lightning, I think it's a bit of regulatory arbitrage in the sense that mm-hmm. it just creates this opportunity for anybody to just pop in and out of a game. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that we can actually perhaps think of games to wage bets on, which are not necessarily casino-style chance games. Mm-hmm. It might be a game of like Bomberman or Battleships or chess or
Smash or something like that.
Yeah, Smash, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about that in small quantities between groups of friends, it's kind of interesting because you can imagine just sitting around with a group of like 4 friends and you just decide to whip up this game and you just wager a bet for like beer money, right?
Yeah. And I remember doing that in college. We used to do that. Well, we would do it with like college football games. We'd have like prop bets, like in game.
Exactly.
With like with singles.
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea here is the game itself can be like a computer game, like a Street Fighter game or something.
Hell yeah. I like that. So what are like the first iterations that are coming out, or are there any?
There are Lightning Network powered games out there now. Some of like
there's a roulette game, right? I know
there's a roulette game. There's Lightning Spin, mm-hmm. made by Rui Gomes from the OpenNode team, and actually Lightning Spin, maybe roulette. I don't know roulette, but Lightning Spin is one of the examples where you have the bidirectional thing, but it's still a chance game. Okay. Right? Provably fair. It's an interesting application, but I want to push that further. I haven't seen the kind of Street Fighter or something game. That's actually how Satoshis.place began. Like the idea of Satoshis.place actually started with making something like a Street Fighter game where like if you punch somebody, it would be a micropayment to you.
Well, this is interesting because you're coming at this. So the like counterparty Ethereum crew would come at gaming from like a non-fungible sort of skin type angle, and you're coming from it from a purely like spectator / gambling angle, which is completely different than the other way that people are attacking gaming via crypto.
Yeah, that's a really good observation because right now there's actually a trend in the blockchain world of like NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and it's revolving around the idea that you can own some crypto assets. I guess CryptoKitties was what kind of brought that into the mainstream
I would
consciousness.
say Rare Pepe's on Counterparty was the original. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Shout out Joe Looney and crew.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea has been around for a while, and actually, Mandel Duck, that's his Twitter handle. He's out in Japan, and he works, or he has worked with Counterparty based games. He's actually like built stuff that use this concept. But you're right. I'm not approaching this as there's some kind of digital thing that I own, because I see some issues there, but I'm rather like looking at the this is an amazing payment rail.
Yeah, as the incentive, like the humans will be driven to gamble because they're addicted to gambling. At least a subsect of us is. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I see it more as a casual, like people having fun, like just a couple of, like I said, like a couple of friends just whip up a game and go, hey guys, like I bet I'll kick your ass in this game, and by the way, whoever wins pays a round of beer.
I can definitely see
the other round.
I can definitely see me and my friends doing something like that. Got a few Bitcoiner friends too, so this might be possible if this ever gets spec'd out. Awesome. Going back to NFTs though, non-fungible tokens, what are your knocks on them or your apprehensions?
Okay, so I've got two main gripes with it. The first one is the idea of scarcity, but we can talk a little bit more about that, I guess. But the other main problem I have is so. One of the things I try to break down in my talk is, when you play a game of, like a board game, like Settlers of Catan or Monopoly, whatever, you're between friends and you generally trust each other that you're not going to like cheat, right? And in a case of Monopoly, like even one of your friends might be the banker, and you trust that he's not going to cheat unless he's your brother or...
I know, yeah.
Right? But generally speaking, that's sort of the setup. But when you bring that game into an online setting, and even in the real world, when we have like a boxing match or the recent like MMA
fight,
right, you need a referee there that controls the rules of the game, make sure that people aren't cheating, and it ultimately dictates the outcome of the match, right? So, and multiplayer games online, they have the same architecture. You have a centralized server, let's say, to which all clients connect to, and that server is known as the authoritative server, and that basically runs a simulation of the game. So all the clients are just basically playing the game, but they're syncing their state to the authoritative server, And so what does this mean? This means that you need to kind of trust that arbiter, right? And that referee. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's sort of in the referee's interest and in the tournament organizer, whatever, that the rules are obeyed and you create a good competitive environment, so forth. So my problem with these NFT token stuff is that, you can create these things that are supposedly scarce. We can talk about that more a bit later. The problem is, then what do you do with them, right? You're going to play a game, okay? Most of these are going to be like a trading card game, and there's going to be rules about mana and strength and whatever. But who dictates those rules, right? And can you trust that person? And if you have to trust that person, then what's the point in making the non-fungible token in the first place? Wasn't this
this is something that Andrew DeSantis raves on a lot about? It was Star Wars Galaxy. Was that the Star Wars Galaxy Heroes? They did something like this where they were like a very open source community game, like sort of run by the community. And at one point, the central authorities of the game sort of fucked up the whole incentives and really screwed over the people who had sunk a lot of time and effort into attaining certain levels of Jedi mastery, I believe. And they changed the rules overnight and really made it so people who did not have to expend that amount of time were able to catch up quicker. So it sort of destroyed the whole incentive system of the game. Yeah.
That's basically my concern. And you could argue that, but I'm going to keep it and I only surrender custody for that brief moment where the game rules are played, right? But then how do you guarantee the game rules are being played correctly? And then, the scarcity thing is another issue.
Well, Sir Koala, they're going to be decentralized, all right? You're going to be able to decentralize these games, and everything's going to be decentralized. And the fact that it's decentralized means that it's provably like scarce, and it makes sense. Don't worry, it makes sense at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, that's have you run an Ethereum node?
I have not tried.
Right.
Have you tried?
Yeah.
How recently?
Like a year and a half ago, and then recently when I was working at a company, we had a lot of issues with running Ethereum nodes, eventually having to like fall back to Infuria and stuff. But
what type of implementation were you trying to spin up?
I can't remember. I wasn't responsible for the infrastructure of that stuff. But that's to me that's sort of where the line breaks with the scarcity stuff, right? Because if you can't guarantee scarcity for the next couple of years, 5, 10, 15, then what are you doing this in the first place?
At what level?
At the level where, the network becomes centralized to the point where another DAO bailout happens, right? Or something like that.
So you're not even saying like centralization of like non-fungible tokens, you're saying centralization of Ethereum.
Yeah, but that's the problem, right? Because the tokens are built on top of of that network. So it's not that I don't believe in the concept of digital scarcity. Obviously I do because of Bitcoin, but in the idea of building tokens, that's also feasible. It's just that, again, this has been done in Bitcoin in Counterparty. It didn't necessarily work out.
It can be done with Liquid now.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. You would probably have to create a federation of like gamers and stuff, game developers or game publishers, or something like that. I'm not sure how that would look like. Even with Lightning, Giacomo Zucco, and he's made this proposal of RGB. That's the idea of making tokens on Lightning, but it's not quite there yet. And basically, I think the issue here is pulling the cart before the horse, to me.
Exactly.
And I'd rather focus my energy on the payment stuff than this pie in the sky thing. I could be wrong, but yeah, that's sort of when I try to reason about it, I can't come up with a conclusion that tells me, yeah, this makes sense.
Right? No, and I think you just made a great point there. Like, a lot of these projects are putting the cart before the horse, and that's what I think a lot of people have a knock on Bitcoin. I mean, that's been in the head, or it's been a big topic the last week in particular. Bitcoin maximalism has been getting dumped on pretty hard. People think I don't want to speak for me. I would consider myself a Bitcoin maximalist. People think Bitcoin maximalism in general is very dogmatic and anti-competitive, where it's not. It's very descriptive. It's like, hey, this works. We want it to work into the future. We, at least I do, try to move from a first principle stance where like you want to make sure everything works correctly and start from its core and work out. Like, yes, you can make really cool tokens on top of Ethereum that's pushed on top of so much obscurity and basically unknown future developments that I'm not willing to risk my money on that protocol. Like, that's a non-starter for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize, is that there's these first principles where Bitcoiners will just say, all right, if you don't check these boxes, it is not worth my time to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's just, I think the application of money is so crucial. And like, we talk about the Cantillon effect on inflation. But if you think about like the Cantillon effect of solving the money problem,
what is the Cantillon effect?
It's like the description, the way to describe when you inflate the monetary supply, and the first people who benefit from that are the closest to that, and then the ones towards the end, but in that sense, it's kind of like maybe it's not a good way to describe it, but it's a small change, it's a small fix to solve this thing about a non-sovereign money, which you can't change the supply of. Like if we fix that, like the second, third, fourth order effects are going to be insane in society, I think. And so to kind of get distracted with all this other stuff is, I think in the broad sense, like it's just going to seem so stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So.
I think we're taking a cosmic turn here. So like how drastic do you think Bitcoin can change society? And like, I know you've played the thought experiments in your mind. Like, what's your like most optimistic view of Bitcoin and how it changes society, and what changes do you want to see?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I think. Have you read you've read the Sovereign Individual? I think I read it because I listened to the podcast.
Read it. Love it. I talk about it often. I talked about it like 3 times this week already.
Yeah, the thing I liked about it was sort of, to me, it helped me answer like why are things, why did balance of power happen this way, and the way it describes like the balance of violence, the ability to
leverage of violence.
Right.
Yeah.
To me, that was a really good way to see things, right? To understand like, why we human civilizations have evolved to this point. And so I think Bitcoin changes that balance of power dramatically. Like the same way that the internet changed the balance of power of communication and dissemination of information, I think Bitcoin is sort of also like massive like revolution in the way that value is stored and transferred, and the effects of that, I don't know. I don't know what the effects are, but it's almost like, does it matter what my opinion is? It's like a moving train. Like the conclusion I have is just like it's the gears are moving, and you're not gonna be able to stop it, and it's gonna be big. Is it gonna be good? I don't know. I hope so, but
yeah. I got a couple of things to piggyback on with this. Like one, so the sovereign, we're going to riff on the sovereign individual here for a little bit. So the sovereign individual talks about 500-year super cycles in particular, that are based on inflection points that are precipitated with technological advancement. And the fact that we have, and again, like I've been thinking about this more recently, the inflection point that we're born in particular, like we have 2 technologies, not just like one. So we have the internet, and I mean, yeah, we probably wouldn't have Bitcoin without the internet, but we have the internet, which is distributing, decentralizing, and making information widely available. Then we have Bitcoin, which is distributing money and decentralizing money and making money very sovereign. And the fact that you have those 2,
and cryptography as well.
Cryptography ties in with it as well. The fact that you have all these crazy innovations happening at once, like the amount of change that we're experiencing in our life is going to be so profound.
Yeah.
We can't even comprehend it, like at a chemical level. Like we have never experienced the rate of change that we are going through right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's heady, man.
It's a simulation.
Is it? Like we're getting closer and closer, it seems like. This tweet deck looks like the Matrix thing where it's just like falling down.
It's like the event horizon. But the empowerment of being able to transact directly with other people without asking for permission. It's like, I was talking about this to somebody at the Lightning residency today. It's like, we were talking about like creating custodial, like third-party custody solutions for Lightning stuff, because AIDS adoption, and it's easier to reason about and stuff. And I'm like, no, open source it, make it like available to everybody. Like I want a kid in Bangladesh to run his own nodes and be not only his own bank but his own payment processor for his village or school. And once you like break the hydra into these like million heads, it's like impossible to stop, basically.
So that's why I like what like BTC Pay server's doing.
Yeah,
open sourcing that.
Those guys, yeah. It's doing amazing work.
But sticking on the sovereign individual, another thing, like you said, which I really appreciate you said, is like this stuff is inevitable. It was predicted. If you take the time to sit down and think about like the trajectory of this technology, it's inevitable. Like and literally on page 25 of the sovereign individual, they predicted Bitcoin almost word for word, like almost word for word. Decentralized, non-sovereign money run on the internet that no one controls and is run by algorithms and is secured with cryptography. Pretty much word for word. Had no idea it was coming, and it's here now. And like you said, it is a better technology. It is inevitable. It is going to keep proliferating and hopefully be ubiquitous one day. Most likely be ubiquitous because it's just a natural progression of the technology that is money. So it's for me at this point, I've recognized that reality and that future, and it's just adapting and making your life as friendly and Bitcoin friendly as possible.
Yeah, it's almost like when society realized that you can get more productivity out of people if they're happy and private property rights and so forth, and you can build a society that can innovate rather than whip them into work, right?
Yeah,
we've seen that, and so Bitcoin is, I think, the next level of that, where it just makes it even more possible to be part of this network that can just go peer to peer, right, without somebody being able to dictate what to do, and so I see it like as perhaps it will trigger another order of magnitude of efficiency in human societies.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting, and I think you can actually bring some clarity to what's interesting about Bitcoin in particular, since it's a global distributed phenomena. You're seeing, especially when it comes to like the interaction of miners, developers, users. There's I don't want to say a culture clash, but there's definitely some friction between, like, especially with the mining and the scaling debates with like East and West, and this might be the first truly global project where it's truly individual plebs coordinating together to build, and there are some like cultural differences. So like growing up in Asia and then and Portugal, so you've experienced the Western and Eastern world. Do you notice that at all? And do you see Bitcoin sort of building bridges between these societies, which haven't been very cooperative up to this point, but could be more cooperative going forward?
Yeah, I do. Same way, like flight airplanes, like cheap flight. Like in Europe, we have the Erasmus project, where students from a country will like spend a semester or a year abroad. And there was some statistic, I can't remember the numbers off my head, but not top of my head, but it was like the number of children born from couples that came from this Erasmus couples. And like it Europe is in a weird situation now with Brexit and some like nationalist movements and stuff, but I feel like the younger generation, they're so much more aware of our neighbors, and that's good. That's a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bitcoin enables that in a similar way. I don't know if I can say that much about China, because the place I lived in was kind of in its own niche. But yeah, I think the mining facilities that are leveraging or arbitraging malinvestment in like power plants to have this surplus energy. Well, I call it malinvestment. Technically, it might not be, because Bitcoin serves as a good way to kind of store that value and absorb that surplus energy, which is a good thing. We want that. We want good, cheap, renewable sources of energy, right? But it's interesting the way that plays out. I don't think it answers your question though. But for example, that story about university students mining because electricity is part of the rent.
They don't have to pay. They don't have to pay for it.
Yeah. So I think that's where it like starts chipping away. But yeah, it's a peer-to-peer protocol, peer-to-peer network, and yeah.
No, I think the crux of what I was trying to get at with that question in particular is like this might be like the first like global project where people are coordinating. I mean, what? There's actually I don't want to say
I think the internet was
the internet.
Yeah, in general. Like playing games when I was growing up. I'm gonna give a shout out to this game now. One of the games that I played a lot when I was a kid was called Subspace, and it was made by Virgin Media, and it was this almost like Space Invaders sort of thing, spaceships, and you basically like it was multiplayer online. One of the first like massive multiplayer games. So you'd be in an arena with like 100 people like battling these ships and stuff, and it was in the late 90s. So back then, I was living in this really small like enclave in China, and most of the people I played with were Americans and Canadians and people from Europe, and it was the first time I had this kind of exposure to people, from abroad and
shit talking you online.
Yeah. Noob. The slogan of the game was meet people from all over the world, then kill them.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
No, that was incredibly ignorant of me to be like Bitcoin's the first time there's ever been anything on a global scale. But I think as time goes on and decentralized and open source technologies become more ubiquitous and more popular and more palatable, and they're actually like the go-to preference, they're preferred to closed source solutions, that it is bringing the world together slowly but surely. And maybe Bitcoin, the open source attempt to build possibly the biggest app ever, which is money, can bring the world together in a way that hasn't happened before.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy because, look, you can travel somewhere in the world, and if you happen to meet a Bitcoiner, and I don't know, you share a cab and then or an Uber or and then you go, hey, let me pay you back. Oh, send me Bitcoin. I was like, oh, I do Bitcoin as well. So it's like this common language of value that globally is understood. You're right. And man, those currency exchanges at airports are ripoffs.
Right? Oh my God! When I went to Riga, when I went to Latvia, I got bent over.
Oh no! You used them?
I used the airport. I just had to. I forgot to set it up with my bank before I got to the airport.
Such traps. It's like
it was obscene.
Yeah.
Luckily, work expenses. Shout out Buy Sell Ads. Thank you. They expensed it, but no. I was gonna segue to something else. Fuck. What was it? This we're imbibing Bullet bourbon right now, by the way. Lightning Koala
so good.
Specifically asked for American whiskey, and I gave you the run-of-the-mill bourbon. It's a good bourbon.
I'm not a very good whiskey connoisseur. I like that single malt Yamazaki.
Okay.
One from Japan.
Yeah. I used to work at an izakaya in college, so I know a little bit about Japanese liquors.
Oh wow, should have asked for that. But this is really good, actually.
Oh, thank you. I shouldn't say thank you. I should. I'll send the people from Bullet Bourbon your regards. What was I about to say though? It's the thing when I just recorded the Rabbit Hole recap with Matt Odell too. And we had a little bit of McAllen.
Just now?
Yeah, before. Yeah, I just posted it right before you came here.
I want to meet Matt. Seems like a cool dude.
Oh, we'll set that up this week. He's in town all week.
Nice. I like the Rabbit Hole recap as well, and also you should do the montage.
Oh, the montage coming next week. We're recording it next week.
You got the script ready?
Yeah, I'm writing it down.
You should include Satoshi's Place.
Oh, it'll be on there. It'll be on there. It's gonna be a good one. I'm trying to figure out the perfect background news for the montage right now, and think of what I was gonna ask you. So we're talking about East West. Oh, here's what it is. you said, here's what it is. So you said that Bitcoin, when you're traveling, it is this global language where you're like taking a cab with somebody. And it's like, oh, you pay me in Bitcoin. It's like, yes. You're a big proponent of satoshis over bits. This is a big debate going on, or starting right now. And this is an important debate in the long run. Yeah. And I think with satoshis versus bits, it's there's a long going debate that's starting to heat up now that Bitcoin's at a level where people are like, oh, buy one Bitcoin, it's like $6,500. Like, that's way too much. And to help with the UX of the overwhelming public, there's a bunch of unit bias. A lot of people think that we should start treating Bitcoin as a unit of account in the digital world. One team that has started this is Samurai Wallet. They are officially not allowing, or they might be.
They're not doing fiat.
Yeah, they're not denominating anything in fiat. It's all going to be denominated in satoshis. So there's a debate right now: should we even put fiat in the wallets? And then, if we don't, what is the nomenclature? Is it satoshis? Is it bits? Like, how do we talk about the denominations of Bitcoin?
Okay, no, fuck fiat. So props to Samurai Wallet. Those guys are legends. I like satoshis, although one of the things about bits that I also like is the fact that it's got those 2 decimal places. To me, it makes sense. It fits into the mental model that people are used to. Because if you go down to satoshis, you can do millibits in Lightning, but it's probabilistic. It's not really, but it's not in the Bitcoin protocol yet. But at the same time, I really like satoshis because it's almost an homage to Satoshi himself.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I have a opinion on this. I don't like bits because it just gets too confusing with the typical like computer engineering world, like computer software world.
Yeah, maybe.
So what is like Satoshi, Finney?
Oh god, I don't know.
Yeah, so there'll be like, so that's another interesting
millibits, right?
Millibits, yeah. There will need to be a whole new nomenclature for denominating Bitcoin in smaller and smaller terms, and that's an interesting and important development on its road to becoming a reserve currency of the world.
Well, in Lightning, I don't think I've seen bits mentioned anywhere.
No. Yeah, it's all satoshis, right?
Yeah,
it's like the biggest.
Which is kind of hard to wrap your head around, because sometimes you see 100,000 satoshis, but I think we just need one more bull run, and then it's like, okay.
Yeah, what is it? It's 1 million satoshis is a Bitcoin, right?
It's 100 million.
100 million is Bitcoin. Yeah, it's off by 2 orders of magnitude.
8 zeros.
Yeah. That shows how much Marty knows about the denomination of Bitcoin.
Don't worry, I only learned it this year. So. Shameful disclaimer.
100 million satoshis is a Bitcoin. I was wrong there. But yeah, that's developing as well.
Yeah.
What else do we got here? How far are we in? Hour and 3 in.
I was going to mention what was it? Education stuff. I don't know why I was going to mention that. Oh, because of unit bias. Like, you know what grinds my gears? Sort of thing.
What is that? What grinds your gears, Lightning Koala?
Unit bias. Lack of education. Yeah. Lack of education. I have a good anecdote about that. I heard, I was listening to your Alan Silbert interview this morning on The Path, the very New Yorker thing.
Are you staying in Hoboken?
No, I'm staying in Jersey City. Okay. Best bagels, by the way, Wonder Bagels. Shout out to Wonder Bagels.
You're gonna find very good bagels in Jersey City.
Yeah,
it's the water. It's the water up here. I hope you know that.
Yeah, I need to work. So, is it Jersey Shore? Is it actually Jersey City? Or
no. Jersey Shore is a
different thing.
Yeah, and Jersey Shore's got a very wide range. It's the whole coast. So my family, I grew up in the South Jersey Shore, which is not at all like what you see on MTV and what that show was.
MTV.
But yeah, closer to the city, Seaside Heights, where that show was from. We're not too far from it, probably like 45 minutes away.
Yeah, okay. This is another thing, actually. Like, a lot of people always joke about Americans. Oh, they don't know where, like, Portugal is or something like that. But you guys...
I know where Portugal is.
Yeah, it's just like you guys have this amazing knowledge of, like, the American states. And like the other, when I was arriving the other day, there was this woman sat next to me on the plane, and she was going to Winnipeg because we stopped over in Toronto. She was going to Winnipeg to see polar bears. Pretty cool. But I was like, where the hell is Winnipeg? So that's one thing. But yeah, going back to the Alan
You don't know your Canadian provinces and cities?
I don't know. Anyway, so the Alan Silbert thing was education about money and finance, which I also concur. It's fucking shocking. But I have another example. When I was growing up in China, where we spoke Portuguese, it's not easy to find out where it is. The Portuguese educational system at the time, and I'm not that old, but it was mandatory to learn English and French, because it was prior to English, it was sort of like the lingua franca of the world.
The Romance languages.
Yeah. And like, why the fuck do you need to learn French in China? Right?
Wait. I'm very confused now because you said you were in a Portuguese-speaking sector in China.
Yeah, in Macau,
French.
basically.
Okay.
Yeah, the gambling mecca of the world right now. And
Je ne comprends français.
Oui, un peu, but not very good.
Muy poquito.
Español.
Me habla muy poquito español.
Yeah, me too. But yes, French was like ridiculous.
I can't speak Portuguese. I can say bom dia. That's about it.
Bom dia?
Bom dia.
That's like a Brazilian accent. That's good.
Yeah.
It's boa noite now because it's evening.
Okay.
But
I have a friend from a friend from Paraguay who speaks fluent Portuguese, and he's got a big bom dia. He's a big bom dia fan. He does like inspirational Instagram posts where he just wakes up in the morning. It's just like bom dia. Let's go. So I'm learning from a friend. Yeah.
it's a cool language. And yeah, but French, what the fuck? And so the education side of finance, I think it stretches beyond that to like other stuff, like this example of learning French when you're in China, when it's probably more useful to learn Mandarin or Cantonese. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've been trying to wrap my head around more recently, especially when it comes to education around finance and economics and accounting and personal finance in particular. Is it intentional to not teach people these things as they grow up so they're useful idiots?
Is it intentional? I don't know. Or is it just
exactly, because you think like as soon as you know these core concepts, you can make more educated decisions. I feel like if you do not know these core concepts of what money is, how finance works, how loans work, the decisions you make based off that lack of knowledge really sets you back.
What's that razor thing? Hanlon razor, is it?
Hanlon's razor.
Is it like benefit of the doubt sort of thing?
Nothing's ever malicious. Nothing's ever done with malicious intent. It's more ignorance.
So is that the case? Like, because do they understand it themselves? Right? Like, CFDs and stuff, like all those weird financial instruments that they made up running up to 2000.
Mortgage-backed securities, the credit default swaps.
Right, just fancy names for stuff. I just feel like maybe they lose themselves in the definitions and they just don't understand it anymore, and then nobody can actually teach it. Maybe, I don't know, benefit of the doubt.
I'm not going to give them that benefit of the doubt. I will say that it got to the point where mortgage-backed securities and credit default swaps, which were basically insurance policies on the mortgage-backed securities, were enabled because Wall Street discovered that the creation of financial products led to fees. Like that's what people have to realize.
The intermediary.
Exactly. Yeah. The intermediary incentive to intermediate got so strong that Wall Street basically created products to take a vig off of every little transaction that happened, and that led to some crazy imbalances in our economy, our global economy, that led to the crash. And I don't think they've gotten any better since a decade ago.
This year has been pretty intense regarding to like institutional investors coming into the space and so. What's your take on that?
It's been the big meme. I don't I actually said this last week when Fidelity announced that they've solved custody for institutional. They solved custody for institutional clients, and Novogratz from Galaxy. I actually really liked what he said, where he said it's going to be a trickle, not a flood into this space. Basically, these products are going to be created, and the institutional money has a lot of money at stake, so they're going to be very cautious and approach this sector in particular with an amount of caution, where it's not going to be a flood of money at once. It'll be, all right, let's test this out. It works. It's doing what we're doing, and okay, we'll add a little more. We'll add a little more. Yeah. Eventually become a flood, but not at the onset.
Yeah. I think the engineering challenge of building good custody solutions, like what Kaza's doing, but also generally this idea that you can work on custody solutions for institutional investors and stuff. It's interesting. I just don't know how it will affect Bitcoin. Basically, like, is it? Yeah.
No, that'll be interesting to see. And then that's another interesting debate that's starting right now. It's like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you guys are Bitcoiners, but you're letting all these institutions come in and they're going to take over." But it's like, it's inevitable if Bitcoin is successful. It's not like you can just like hold your arms out and stop Wall Street from participating. Like, if it is actually might be a good sign if they are trying to participate, that it is worth participating in. And I would argue that you can maintain the decentralized, independent, self-sovereign ethos of Bitcoin while allowing Wall Street to come in. They can do what they want. I'm not gonna hold my Bitcoins or my money in their products that are related to Bitcoin. But if people want to do that, and that's how they're comfortable with it, good for them.
Well, because the argument then is like the whole gold thing, right? Like how central banks captured like most of the world's gold, and then like if a situation like that happens with Bitcoin, obviously it's different, but just in the interest of studying that possibility, like if it's an issue.
No, that's definitely something to think about in the long term, but I don't think it'll be like the options. So the scenario in which I see it getting as bad as gold is if there's ever conditions where you can't pull your Bitcoin off an exchange. So like I would only recommend buying Bitcoin at a place where you can like take it out of that custody solution and put it into your own wallet.
Like on demand.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So I think the market will just, in the game theory, will work itself out, where it's like, if you're not offering the ability to withdraw your Bitcoin into a personal wallet, then I'm not going to use a product like that.
Yeah. And on a small scale, that's kind of some of the conclusion that I was coming to with the Lightning games sort of thing. It's like, you can go into their custody for the time that you need to, but the key here is that you can come in and out like instantly and on demand.
Yeah, whenever you want to.
Yeah.
And it's a growing and learning experience for people to become comfortable with this, because it is a new model of people have never been able to do this. Like, people have had the ability and to have their bank accounts frozen at any time, but with Bitcoin, if you have the ability to withdraw it and have it in your full custody at any time, that's sort of new.
Yeah. Well, this is actually on one of my slides, I'm like, okay, why Lightning games? And one of the reasons I state is because it's a younger audience usually that games are targeted to. And I think we need to think of this in terms of generations, and that younger audience is the one that's like most likely to adopt this new technology, because they can pick up things quicker. But also it's going to be the whole, like Andreas talks about this a lot, like the whole kid who like goes and like he can't open a bank account, but then like when he finally reaches the age when he can open a bank account, it's like, oh, you need I need to
go
ID.
to a branch.
I need to go to a branch. We're only open 5 days a week, and you have to pay all these fees. And by that time he's like, well, I've already been using Bitcoin and Lightning, and I've been playing these games with my friends, and we're exchanging value, and this is, why do I need this?
That'll be unconscionable.
Yeah.
So that's what. Remember, was it Minecraft experimenting with Bitcoin at some point? Where
So there's a guy called Constantine who wrote this Unity plugin. Unity is an engine for making games, and it's actually what Fortnite is built with.
Really?
Yeah, and it's free, and you can make 3D games on it and stuff. And he made a plugin so that you can render Lightning invoices and stuff in game. And I'm not sure actually if this is related to Unity, but he made a demo where he had a Minecraft game, and you could like render a QR code, and then I don't know, like for instance, you can buy like a teleport to another location in the map, or things like that. He actually in Lisbon, he showed me another really cool example, which was Unity has this a sort of template demo for when you first start developing it. It's like a tank battle game. It's just so you can start getting your hands dirty with the engine. And he created this way for you to basically... So he handed me this Nintendo Switch controller, and we both started playing this tank game. And at some point, he like renders this QR code on screen, and he goes, "Oh, check this out." He scans it, pays it, and it triggers a power-up on my tank. So I got this shield, and I can just... Yeah, so this is really cool, because again, applications of Lightning in the context of games.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and there's this whole phenomena of like Twitch streamers who, they get donations as well, and apparently there's like some gambling and stuff as well. But you can imagine a situation where you as a spectator are watching this game, and you can participate in it and interact and support your team or interfere in some way. I guess it's worth mentioning.
We're getting to such weird places as a society. We're like watching people game online and sending money to help them out while they're playing that game.
Dude, like in August, there's this Dota 2 competition. It's a game like League of Legends. Like StarCraft. Real-time strategy game.
I was a big StarCraft guy back in the day.
Yeah, me too. For number one, yeah.
Yeah.
And in August, they held the annual tournament called the International, and the grand prize was $11 million.
What?
For a team of 5 kids, essentially.
Taking home 2.2 mil a piece.
Yeah. I was watching, I was looking at the Instagram of this kid who's like visiting this museum for Red Bull Formula 1 cars. It's like, should I? Sort of like
nonchalantly.
should I suggesting should I spend it on it? But actually they seem really cool. And but this is how big esports has gotten to, and e-gaming has gotten to.
Yeah. Oh, it's getting to a weird place. Like Twitch in particular. I've been following that via Barstool, a company I used to work for. Like they're a sports comedy brand and like a satire brand, but a couple of their personalities have built out like a Twitch channel, and it's gotten like crazy traction. Like people will sit there and watch other people play video games for quite a while.
Yeah,
and they'll interact with them.
It's so cool. Like this kind of transition from like real world sports to digital gaming. Like
that's what I need to get back into gaming. I haven't had a system in 5 years. I got rid of them.
Yeah, sorry?
I got rid of my gaming systems. I haven't had one in 5 years.
But like PC?
Like Xbox. I was an Xbox guy.
Yeah, I'm mostly like a casual gamer. Yeah. I mean, like there's this phenomena of like IO games. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No.
This 19-year-old Brazilian kid made a game called Agar.io. There's Agar.io. And it's a browser-based game, and it's characterized by simple graphics, simple mechanics, and very addicting, sort of accessible gameplay. So you just pretty much anybody with a computer or browser can access it, hop into a game, start playing. and it was eventually featured on House of Cards. I didn't actually watch the scene, but I think it was like Kevin Spacey alluding to like U.S. politics and showing how this game sort of represented the mechanics of like dog eat dog stuff. And actually, the probably before that, the game got famous because there was like an election in Turkey, and people were like voicing their opinions on the game. But it's by all means considered like a casual kind of game, and I think this is also again a target for like Lightning Network games. It's like aim for these experiences. Like obviously there's games that aim for realism, but that's not necessarily the recipe for success. There are a lot of like indie games out there that are massively successful and don't necessarily have the most amazing graphics ever, but they have this amazing gameplay. And
something like Crazy Birds or whatever. What was it? Angry Birds. That's what it was. Yeah, and then like something like Craigslist, which is like HTML, CSS, is like one of the most successful apps in the world. It's got the shittiest design in the world. It's just pure HTML, CSS, but
Hacker News as well.
Yeah. That's what. If the content you're providing is good, people will flock to it. Yeah,
exactly. One really good example I like is a game called Hotline Miami. Mm-hmm. It's an indie game. Just became massively successful, and it's just like the idea of these like two guys, and they polished the game and eventually like made this really cool thing. It's almost funny because I almost think like we're gonna reach the point eventually where we're gonna be like in a VR situation, like in a virtual world, playing some kind of like game like this. It's simplified graphics, right? So similar to like how Netflix has that thing where you're in a fake theater watching a movie, right? Mm-hmm. I would wager a bet that we'll end up in a situation where we're in virtual reality,
fake stadium,
playing
watching
like Snake on a Nokia.
Oh my god, dude! Are we gonna have a Ready Player One world at some point? Do you think?
Probably, yeah.
So I was talking about this with Matt Odell last week, so there was a cryptocurrency again, talking about patience, and we're not going to get everything out of the box, but it will come eventually. There was a cryptocurrency back in the day, like 2013, 2014, Geo, where they would like geographically they would airdrop some of the supply of their coin in areas, and you go on a treasure hunt and go to like physical areas on a map and use a QR code in VR to acquire the coins, like in a virtual reality world. Like this could be enabled with Bitcoin, correct? Like where you can, like in a VR world, you can hypothetically enable like Lightning transactions via QR codes.
Maybe. Again, the sort of authoritative server architecture needs to come into play here, because basically if you imagine like, you put some QR code in a location in a map, right? Mm-hmm. You can't reveal that location beforehand, right? So you can't necessarily serve the game to the user where he can maybe like reverse engineer it or something like that and figure out where it is. It would have to be more of a interactive experience where he's
getting a constant feed back and forth.
Yeah. Like you take in their trigger for motion.
Things are getting revealed in real time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, you reminded me of Pokemon Go. Like I thought people didn't play that anymore, but in New York City, like yesterday, there was loads of people out in random squares, like playing this game still.
Yeah, it's still happening around here. It's annoying at some points, but
yeah.
I yell at the Pokemon goers now. I'm like, hey, you're way past. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not going to yell at any Pokemon goers.
Pokemon maximalist.
It's not worth it. We're almost an hour and a half in here. I guess I don't know what else I want to pick your brain about. What are you most excited about for Lightning, for Bitcoin in general, for life in general, outside of Bitcoin?
I'm getting married next year. That's the most exciting thing.
Congratulations.
I did a lot of proof of work with the church recently.
Did you have to do one of those days where you sit there for 8 hours?
Yeah, kind of. Italian like Catholic church system works in interesting ways. We had to basically go in this like church in the mountains and like spend the day there with family. It was really wonderful, but I was really worried because we had to like I don't know how to describe it, like get certified. I don't know, like there was a priest in front of us and he had to like,
I know what it's like.
Yeah,
I'm an Irish Catholic. I decided to forego all the traditional Catholic.
You didn't have a church wedding?
No, I did not. I eloped, but
yeah, it's.
But I know the process you went through.
It's really interesting because, sorry, going off on a tangent now. You know, like when we talk about proof of work, and somebody, I think it was Andreas, once made an analogy of like the pyramids and how, you know, when you look at them, it's like shit. Those guys were badass and they did that, and you know that they did that because that stuff is so fucking hard to even pull apart, never mind make it, right? I see that a lot with the church, and especially in Italy, right? And even like we went to a bunch of weddings this year and we were in Venice, and the whole city is like made to last. It's like fucking amazing, and you watch these buildings with these frescoes that have been around for centuries, and it's like, wow, like shit isn't made like that anymore nowadays, you know?
Right, the oldest thing you find in America is like 300 years old, if that.
Yeah, well, you got some really cool, there's a really cool cathedral here or church in New York. I can't remember the name now, but in front of Rockefeller. We went in. It was amazing, actually. It was really nice experience. But yeah, when I'm looking at stuff like that, like I always think of it in that sense, you know. It's like all this effort and amount of work that was put into creating these monuments and the culture around it that still prevails today. I feel like proof of work is, in a sense, gonna be similar in the far distant future, in the sense that, wow, those guys like mined those blocks.
Yeah, we're just imparting that view of the world into the digital world.
Yeah.
And that's like the one thing, another thing that's become more and more prominent in my mind is that proof of work is the connection between the physical and digital world.
Oh, yeah.
Which is beautiful,
yeah,
if you think about it.
Definitely. It's like the through energy, the most fundamental unit of the universe.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets weird. Like, are we in a simulation? Are we discovering ourselves right now? Like, is Bitcoin like going to lead us to something that we may not want to know? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm an optimist in that sense.
I'm very optimistic as well.
Because I don't want to say that we have a bad, like in Portugal, for instance, like things are good. There's nothing necessarily bad about. I mean, in fact, Portugal's amazing. You should go visit in Portugal for sure. But it's a very socialist system, and you see things that disrupt society, like Airbnb, like Uber and stuff, and then you see like all this, we must regulate it and stuff, and then I see like Bitcoin is going to be like very disruptive for those kind of places, and enabling maybe. But yeah, sorry, I was saying about the church. So I had to memorize this stuff to say, and I didn't have that much time, and ended up memorizing like this one thing, and somehow it was the exact one that they like asked, sort of like we had to say, and yeah, it was a cool experience. But Italy is another country that's suffering a lot from sort of the state control. It's really hard to be an entrepreneur in Italy, especially in the south, and you really see that. And so when I think about Bitcoin, I think about like what it's gonna fix and solve. It's those kind of things. It's like helping the lives of those people that are like having to move away from their hometowns because there's no work, because everything's so corrupt and doesn't function. My optimism is that Bitcoin actually will fix that. I think
one thing I've been trying to like caution people. Like Bitcoin will give people a tool to fix that. I think Bitcoin is it's not going to be the panacea, but it is a very effective and very powerful tool where like the amount of leverage that you get because of it is such that the power that it gives you is orders of magnitude better than anything you've ever experienced up to this point. But Bitcoin will just help us realize that if we have a stable base of a monetary system from which to operate, we can do some pretty creative and pretty crazy things in an open global economy.
Yeah, and we have like a stable sort of store of value, I guess. It's like one of the ways I described it to a friend of mine was like, Bitcoin is the thing that makes you not have to get up from your couch. Not in a way that like it makes you lazy, but in the sense that with fiat, you have to go and look for sources to beat depreciation, right?
Yeah.
And so you were forced to
go find yield,
to find risk and so forth. And Bitcoin is the inverse of that. Bitcoin is the thing that lets you park your money because you can focus on the longer term project or the longer term target. I mean, I think Saifuddin puts it like really well in his book, and I really agree with that stuff.
Yeah, and that's why I think we should keep Bitcoin as slow, dumb, and simple at the protocol level, because all you need is that certainty that you know that Bitcoin is going to produce a block every 10 minutes with a certain block reward, with a certain set of consensus rules. And all you need to do is have that happen, and then you can base a lot of decisions off of that.
Yep.
We've ripped it here, hour and a half. You got any parting notes for the freaks?
Get involved, run your own node, and hodl. Look for cool ways to spend Bitcoin. Actually, Bitcoiners are like awesome in terms of buying stuff. Actually, like you see this with like stickers and things like that. So if you are looking for ways to make some money, I guess it's like come up with something that touches on Bitcoin culture, Bitcoin memes, whatever, and make something and sell it to people. It doesn't even have to be something like that. It can even be like selling wine, or maybe you make hummus or whatever. Just like offer your product for sale for Bitcoin, ship it internationally, whatever, and you will find people that want to spend their Bitcoin on that.
Yeah. With that being said, hey, advertisers out there, we accept Bitcoin payments. So if you're looking to advertise and are willing to pay in Bitcoin, we folks here at Tales from the Crypt are totally open to your investment. As long, you will be vetted. You will be vetted to a certain extent. Lightning Koala, it's been a pleasure. This is the first time we ever met. It's a great conversation.
Cheers, Marty. It was amazing being here.
Thanks for coming, man. To you freaks out there, peace and love.
Bye, freaks.
Pew, pew.